Hello everyone, this is Moehawkman, and today's video is going to be a slightly weird one. I decided to screen 100,000 ancient gravel because I was curious if this could be a half-decent money-making method. Now, you can expect to make anywhere between 4 and 6 million GP per hour, depending on the cost of your investment resources and the selling price of the materials. Now you're probably wondering why anyone would do this, and I'll show you. The list you see right now is all the materials you can get from screening ancient gravel, and every single one is profitable based on these prices. The profit margin will always be positive because even the cheaper materials are close to 2K each, while the more expensive materials are over 4K each. Obviously, like any other money maker video, never trust any prices because the grand exchange prices are always changing. Let's start by saying the requirements to do this can be considered rather high and a deterrent if you're not willing to put in the effort. With that being said, I highly recommend only screening soil when your archaeology level is at least 110. You can do this at a lower level, but I wouldn't recommend screening soil anywhere below level 99 because you lose too much accuracy bonus, which will affect your overall GP per hour. Now, I do need to preface that I did this when I was level 120 archaeology, so I had the highest accuracy bonuses possible. Another important requirement to do this method effectively is you need the full Master Archaeology outfit. To get the full outfit, you need to complete the Grandmaster qualification requirements of the Archaeology Guild and have 250,000 chrono notes ready to buy the set from the guild store. The reason you absolutely need this outfit is because of the set bonuses that it gives you, which are the screening time reduction and the 7% screening accuracy success rate. The time to screen each soil is 1.2 seconds with the full outfit and 1.8 seconds without it. Now the time reduction doesn't seem like much, but it pays off in the long run. For example, for every 100 soil you screen, you're saving 1 full minute, which is 120 seconds versus 180 seconds. For example, if you screen 10,000 soil, you can save 100 minutes total. Now when I did the 100,000 soil that I had planned, I ended up saving myself over 16 hours of playtime just by wearing this outfit, so it is definitely worth it. The same goes for the accuracy bonus. The more soil you screen, the more materials you will get. Statistically speaking, for every 100 soil you screen, you should get at least 7 more materials than if you weren't wearing the outfit. This is where the numbers game comes into play. If you screen 1,000 soil, you should get 70 more materials. If you screen 10,000, you should get 700 more. If you screen 100,000, you should get 7,000 more materials. Just from these bonuses alone, you can kind of see why I say this is a requirement, because it boosts your overall GP per hour and it makes it more worth it in the long run by also saving you time. Another requirement is to have the proper divination level to make whatever porter you choose to use. You'll need to consider the material cost versus the time to make when figuring out which porter to use. For example, porter 7s are the most expensive to make but have 50 charges each, while porter 5s are cheaper to make while only having 25 charges each. However, you also need to consider how much time you will need to make all the porters. Since I was doing 100,000 soil, I didn't want to spend 2 times as much time making porter 5s versus making porter 7s, even if the cost is a bit more per charge. This is also something you'll need to consider if you decide to make money by screening soil. Now for reference, porter 4s require 68 divination, porter 5s require 88 divination, porter 6s require 94 divination, and porter 7s require 99 divination. So you can decide which to make depending on your level and the cost versus time factor. As a side note, this next part isn't really a requirement but more of a suggestion. If you have a Grace of the Elves necklace and Luck of the Dwarves ring, I recommend wearing it because you can get sarin spirits while screening soil. Even if you don't get anything amazing, you can still get things like ruined salvage, dragon weapons, herbs, and more random items worth a decent chunk of GP. You also have an extremely small chance of a Hazelmere ring drop, but I'll take a small chance over zero chance any day. Also, another little unique thing about the Grace of the Elves necklace is that you can store up to 500 porter charges in it, and you can easily right click and charge all at once if you have some in your inventory. Let's move on to the time factor cost. If you're paying enough attention, it should only take you about 1 hour to screen 3000 soil. The most annoying thing though is that you will find random artifacts while screening, and this stops the screening process and can slow you down if you're not paying enough attention. In the worst case scenario, this will affect your GP per hour. Now, I don't really think I need to say it at this point, but this method is 99% AFK. The only time you ever need to pay attention is if you hear a sarin spirit spawning in, you run out of soil in your soil box and you need to bank, or the screening process has stopped. Any other time, you can just let the game run in the background and go watch YouTube videos to pass the time or whatever else, because this will take a while if you have a lot of soil to screen. Now, the time it took for me to screen all 100,000 ancient gravel was over 33 hours. So all in all, from beginning to end, this entire venture from getting all the resources to the actual screening process took me around 36 hours, and I split this over around 10 days. Some of this time was actually spent during DXP, as you can see in the corner with the timer counting down. Now let's move on to the GP cost investment. There are two main things that you will need to consider before going all in on this method. The first being what type of soil you choose to screen, since the cost of each type of soil and the materials you gain are different. The second is you need to consider what type of porter you want to use and how much it will cost for the materials to build the porters. With the most recent divination update, I ended up spending a decent chunk of money buying energy and necklaces to make the newest porters, which are tier 7. Like I said before, porter 7s aren't the most cost efficient option, but I chose to make them because I didn't want to waste more time making the lower tier porters. So I bought 2,000 cut dragonstones around 7.9k each and 240,000 incandescent energy, averaging around 200 GP each. I already had 2,000 gold bars banked, but I added in 2 million GP to the cost factor anyway. So for the total cost of making porter 7s, it ended up around 66 million GP and around 3 hours to make all the porters from scratch. Now onto the cost of the ancient gravel. Surprisingly, this didn't cost as much as I thought. When I put in the initial offer for 100,000, the grand exchange price was hovering around 210 GP each, but I put in an offer of 250 each and waited it out due to grand exchange buy limits. In the end, the total cost of the soil was slightly over 22 million GP, which puts the total cost of all resources needed for this method to be around 88 million GP. Now let's get to what you've been waiting for, the loot. As you can see, this price check is just slightly over 300 million GP, which means I made a profit of around 212 million GP. If you divide that amount over the time that I spent, it averages around to about 5.9 million GP per hour, which I'll round to 6 mil. Realistically, you shouldn't expect to make this much GP per hour because I did buy the resources when they were a little bit cheaper. If you were to do this method right now when their prices are higher, I would say the average GP per hour would be around 4.8 to 5.1 mil GP per hour, which is still pretty good considering how easy and AFK this method is. Now look at these material values. The Ancient V's, Insignias, and Blood Orcus account for more than half of the price check, and all the 3rd Age Iron and Imperial Steel is another 60 mil just by themselves. Just these 5 materials accounted for over 200 million GP, while everything else added up to the rest of the 300 mil price check. Now, if you're curious about how many artifacts I ended up getting, take a look at this screenshot I took, and I counted it to be 85, which is a little less than the supposed 1 in 1000 drop chance, but who really cares about extra artifacts? If anything, that is just wasted soil that could have been more archaeology materials. Now, if you do plan on doing this method, but you don't want to screen ancient gravel, the only 2 other soils I would recommend you screening are saltwater mud and earth and clay, because you have to look at the rarity of the resources that you are getting. Some of the green resources from those 2 soils are actually more valuable than anything else that you could possibly get. But you also have to remember that those soils do cost more, and you may lose some GP per hour because of the other materials not being worth as much. Now, if you don't mind sitting here AFK for hours and have absolutely nothing else to do, this is a great way to make some money without having to pay too much attention to the game. Few presses here and there, and boom, millions of GP per hour for very little effort. Anyways, this has been your fellow RuneScaper Moehawkman. If you have any ideas for me to test out, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll see if the idea is worth it. As always, be kind to one another, stay safe, have a nice day. Peace out, everyone.